Hello, scrappers and recyclers. Welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where we talk about things like precious metals, industrial metals, and the business of scrapping and recycling. It is great to be with you all today. Jay Cutson, thank you very much for the like and share. JR Pratt, I hope you can make it back from, I know you're busy doing a lot of stuff. So HH Recycling, welcome. See you, Scrapping Roger. Always great to have you here. JCT, great to have you here. Electronic Scrapper, always great to have you here. It has been a very interesting week, to say the least. So we've got some interesting things to chat about this week. Jay Cutson, great to have you here, man. Now, you all know, you've probably seen his shorts already. Our good friend Scrapping Irish is out goofing off at some sporting event and traveling about. So we will not be going to Scrapping Irish when we're done with this live stream. And he appears to be having way too much fun on that trip. Dean, great to have you here. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into what's happening over in the world of gold. Now, as you all know, oh, and by the way, make sure you let me know. Normally, Scrapping Irish is right on top of keeping me up to date with my audio, but let me know, if we have any audio issues that come up. So let's see. Wait a minute, Dean. You're saying what a bad week you had. My daughter had her. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, Dean, I am so sorry, man. That is terrible. Oh, Dean, so very sorry. So everybody, please keep Dean's daughter in your prayers, because such a terrible thing to have happen. Oh, I've always in the back of my mind been worried about, those kind of things, whether it's in the kitchen or in a workshop or something like that. Oh my God, so sorry to hear that. All right, so let's get back over to gold now. We've had a few things that have gone on in the big economic picture, and so I thought it would be interesting to look and see if anything is reflecting in gold. This last week we had the Fed staying steady with the interest rates, but there might be another rise ahead. We'll see how that plays out. And usually it's the Fed interest rates that drive what happens to gold, because that drives the investment quality of gold. So with the Fed holding steady where we're at, that was one of the major influences in gold. And then, of course, we all know we've got the UAW strike going on, which could maybe cause some jitters, and the potential U.S. federal government shutdown, which can also cause jitters. So we'll see. We'll see what if we can notice anything going on with gold. So here's the 24-hour, and we see that gold is up a little bit here. So we see a little bit of an upward trend, and that's probably reasonable, given that the Fed did not increase the interest rates. So people, there's a balance of investing in gold versus CDs and other type investments. Copper Buck, great to have you here, man. Let's go ahead and get my act together here with the buttons. So here's the 3-day, and this would be a little bit more telling, because you can see that we were back here and gold was sort of hanging flat, right? And then people start trying to guess what the Fed's going to do, and so we see gold coming up, and then basically the Fed says, yeah, we're not going to raise rates, so gold sort of stabilizes again. That is that would not be at all unexpected in what we would given everything that's going on right now. So a little bit of jitters leading to some increase, but not huge increase. Things sort of stabilize a little bit, so things flatten out. So, we'll just we have to watch and see how this plays out now for a while. Here's our 1 week, kind of flat. It says, the chart says it's up 0.11%, which is essentially nothing. So relatively flat for the week overall. But right here, we can see right here what went on near the end of the week that we just talked about. Long term, we see that, gold was down, but that's because we've had because the interest rates have been rising and people are using other cash and bank investments instead of necessarily gold. So we've had some downward pressure on gold as a result. And if we look at the year, you really don't, this, if you look at from March through where we're at now, you've got some ups and down and up and down, but, depending upon, of course, if you bought up here, now you're seeing quite a bit of decrease. But, if you were back in early March and you bought here, then you're up, right? I mean, this is the way the game is played. Kind of overall, this is not much happening in the gold world here, other than what we have seen because of the rising interest rates, having some pressure on gold as an investment. What does that mean, of course, for us as scrappers and recyclers, especially in the e-waste market? When the gold prices don't go up, the price for boards doesn't go up. So I don't think we're going to see any major changes to price for our e-waste scrap, that is gold dominant type e-waste scrap. You look here, here's the full year, and we actually had some price increases. Then it kind of stabled out a little bit down here, but depending upon where you want to put this arrow, it's down, don't get me wrong, it's depressed, but this is not terrible. We're still at over 1900. So bottom line is, I don't expect a whole lot to change for gold prices. If we start hearing more hawkish signals out of the Fed, that could have a negative impact on gold. But right now, I think gold is just going to sort of keep going up and down and up and down, but not change a whole lot overall for a while. So what are you all going to do with your, here we're going to go back to the 3-day here. So what are you all going to do with your gold bearing material, your circuit boards, your chips and things? Are you going to keep selling them? You going to hang on to them? What's your plan? My plan is I sell when I get a certain quantity. So I try to have a box that's between 30 and 40 pounds to ship off to board sort of the higher grade material, because that is the sweet spot of what I get for discounts on my postage. For me, it's trying to get in that sweet spot of 30 to 40 pounds and ship material off to board sort to keep my cash flow going. There are some things that I will hang on to in anticipation of some gold prices, but generally speaking, I don't play that game with gold. I am doing that with my copper, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Copper Buck Recycling says, sell, sell, sell. Oh, let me get over here. There we are. So Copper Buck Recycling is saying, sell, sell, sell. So that's, I can't argue with that, man. Keep making that money from your boards. Keep making it. So, if the Fed does raise interest rates, then gold prices could go down a little bit. So it's probably not a bad idea to be selling your gold just in case that's what plays out. All righty. Gold, we love gold. I love gold, but I don't see a whole lot happening there. So I guess the recommendation is keep selling. Keep selling. I don't see the benefit for for your stash, of gold-bearing materials. Now, if you are a person who stacks gold in coins and bars and things like that, that's a different story entirely. Because we got JR Cat weighing in here saying hold. Again, this is just what I'm doing, with the shark scrapper business. I sell my boards as I get the weights that I need in order to keep my cash flow going to pay all the bills that I have to on a regular basis. And then when I get a little bit extra, I put some gold or silver bullion type products aside to hang on as strategic reserve. Alrighty, so I want to go back to a comment here. Yeah, Jill, E-Waste Jill is saying that she's got some pictures from Yellowstone National Park from last week. Very cool. Yellowstone is a beautiful place. I hope you weren't out there taking selfies with the bison and doing some of the stuff that we see the stupid tour eyes out there doing, going off trails and sticking their hands in the hot pools and stupid things like that. There ought to be a place place to put those kind of tourists so they don't hurt themselves or, create a bad situation with the natural beauty that is Yellowstone Park. Love the park though, beautiful park. And then I also want to go up here, let's see, Dean was saying that he's got a GoFundMe going. Dean, you won't be able to put the link up here, but if you let people know what your channel is, so that they can go check it out. If folks want to go over there and try to help out, please do. So yeah, Dean, just go ahead and let us know what your channel is, so folks can go look for that. Or if there's a if you've got the name on the GoFundMe account, go ahead and put that in the chat so that folks can see what they should look for when they go to the GoFundMe website. Oops. All right, so we had a question here from Truck Fan. Have you ever found a digital camera in the scrap? I found 6, 3 working, 2 partially working, but have dead pixels on the screens, and one's a DSLR. So, I do frequently find cameras, and I get cameras, in the loads that come in. A lot depends on the camera. I have scrapped a few of them, and they're very fiddly. There's a lot of screws, a lot of tiny little screws. It's just kind of a pain. So, depending upon the type of camera, you might be able to put it in with your cell phones or your iPads, your tablets, if your yard or your buyer buys those. If it's one of the old larger beasts, you're not going to be able to throw that in with the phones or the tablets. So in that case, you may want to mess around with digging into them, or if all else fails and you just need to get rid of them, you can always throw them in with your shred. So it's those are frustrating because they show up and you got what are you going to do with them? So that's what I've done with them anyway when I get them. Found a fully working power bank in the scrap once. Yep, those are always cool. It's always good when you find stuff that works and you can use, right? Isn't that cool? And Dean was saying that he's got more information on his community tab for his website. JR Cat, bison are better than bleach on the Jeep. That's just wrong. That's just wrong, J.R. Cat. I mean, I don't disagree with you, but man, that's wrong. Let's see. Roger says he sends his sorted whole electronic teardown. Oh, okay, yeah. If you've got a way to sell that as whole electronic teardown at 20, that's a good one. And hey, Roger, is that with board sort or is that one of your local yards? Yeah. So that's a good place to do it too. All right, and so Angela is saying she laughed when 20-something Chinese men went dashing towards mom elk and babies. Oh my God. Yeah, you know what? That would have been interesting. Yeah, I can't even imagine. You know, it's like, how stupid can these people be, right? I mean, these are great big animals too. I don't know if, I mean, not everybody has seen elk, but an elk is a big animal. And if that big animal decides that you're threatening him, you're going to lose, okay? That's all there is to it. They're going to squash you. So, yeah, that's a rough one there. Roger says, no, it's his local yard, about a 2-hour drive. Okay, cool. That makes it even better, right? Because then you're not even worried about the shipping. Because 25 cents a pound, once you get done paying shipping, which for me is $1 to 75 cents a pound, I'd be losing money if I did that. But if it's your local yard and you have it in there with the rest of a regular load that you're making, that's great. So, all right. And Truck Fan says, I'm not really a scrapper, but I do deal with e-waste, mostly computers. Oh yeah, there's dust is everywhere inside the older computers. That's when you look at some of and dust is the least of the issues that I deal with when I'm breaking stuff down. You look at some of my computer scrap outs, man, I have had dead animals and rodent nests and wasp nests. Yeah, there's older PCs can have some really nasty things in there. All right, so and let's see, what do we got here? This you should them in Jasper, Canada, when they see bears left. I guess you're talking about tourists still. Yeah, bush dog. It's like I can only imagine. You get some tourists that just they're just not. It's like, so when I lived on Cape Cod, we used to, during the summer, we used to refer to it as tourist brain, because you get all the people coming onto Cape Cod for vacations and their vacation brains take over and they forget how to drive. They walk in the middle of the street without paying attention. And now that there's sharks in the beach, you've got these morons that there'll be a shark warning and they'll go out there anyway. It's like, oh, good Lord, really? Really? What are you thinking? Oh, hey, Irish is in the game. Well, hello, Scrapping Irish. Wasn't expecting to see you come up, but great to have you here. I've been enjoying your shorts, so that was very clever of you. Very clever. Very nice. Good work there. Earl, welcome. Great to have you here as well. All right, well, I'm getting sidetracked here with the chat. Let's get on to our next discussion. And this is time for the safety comment of the week. And I had a good reminder of why it's important to wear gloves this week. 2 specific things that happened. One, I was grinding away on something and the grinder skipped and it hit my hand, but because I had gloves on, I did not dig into my flesh. All right, so the glove was able to give me enough protection that the hands were fine. There was no damage. The glove took a little bit of damage, but they were the right gloves to wear for grinding, and so we were good. But the second thing was my HOA sent me a notice. I hate HOAs. I can't wait to get out of this neighborhood. but I got this notice because my fence wasn't stained. Now, I've been living here for 7 years or something like that, and all of a sudden they're telling me I have to stain my fence. All right, don't want to even get started on the HOAs because I'll spend the whole hour complaining about HOAs. So anyway, I had to go out and get get this stain. And of course, they tell you, you can choose this stain or this stain. They're the only two that are approved, and neither one of them looks good. But so anyway, so we ended up, getting the stain, and I'm out there staining the fence, and it was relatively warm and humid day, and so I didn't want to. I actually did try to put on some plastic gloves, the nitrile gloves, and my hands were so sweaty by that time. I couldn't get the gloves over my hands, so I just said, it's just stain. I'm not going to worry about it. And of course, by the time I get done, my hands are got all like speckles and globs of stain and stuff all over them, and they cleaned up pretty well, with soap and water, fortunately. But it really drove home the point, and gave me a good thing to point out here, and that is that there are different gloves for different purposes. And like everything in the safety world, it's a risk assessment and a risk tolerant decision, right? So when I'm using my grinder or my Sawzall, I always have eye protection on, I have gloves on. I should be wearing a long sleeve shirt, and I really am thinking about just keeping some sort of long sleeve kind of protection there, because what I have noticed sometimes with the grinder is that my arms will, I'll feel the stuff hitting my arms. And so I'm thinking about the gloves that I've seen that have real long sleeves that come, way up your arm, as a way to protect my arms and not have to have a long sleeve shirt on the whole time. So heavier duty gloves when you're grinding, lighter duty gloves when you're actually doing your scrapping of your PCs. You need the manual dexterity for taking apart PCs and things. And if you got big, heavy leather gloves on, you're not going to be able to have that manual dexterity that you need. So lighter weight gloves when you're doing that kind of stuff. If you're handling chemicals, then you need to have the proper type of rubber glove to protect you from the chemicals that you're handling. And that's important that you check almost every single container of a hazardous chemical. Is going to tell you what kind of safety protection you should have on. And there are some types of rubber that doesn't react well with some chemicals, so you want to make sure that you're wearing the appropriate kind of rubber glove, whether it's a nitrile or whatever the right type is to protect you from whatever chemicals you happen to be handling at the time. Those gloves also come in really handy when you have to clean up after your dog. So please, everybody, make sure that you have some gloves available. And I hate to pick on, well, no, I love to pick on Ian Matthews. By the way, if there's anybody in the chat that's not familiar with Ian Matthews and his channel, highly recommended. The guy's a crack up. But I laugh sometimes because I'll see him put on these nitrile or these plastic gloves, and I'm like, Ian, you're working with sharp stuff and a grinder, and you've got these little plastic gloves on. What do you think that's going to do to protect you? It's like, gah. Anyway, so Ian Matthews, fun channel to watch. Although I tell you, I'd be really careful to not necessarily follow what he does from a safety perspective. Let's see. Copperbuck is saying that he found the site for to be able to donate for Dean, so that's cool. I don't know. I know you're not going to. I don't think that the system is going to let you put a link in the live stream system. But Dean, if you want to try to type it in, go ahead and give it a try, man. I don't know if the system will let you, but go ahead and give it a try. I certainly don't mind. Let's see. Roger is saying, I'm a full-time business. Those particular examples are probably not something you want to put on YouTube where OSHA and your insurance company can see them. I must have missed a comment somewhere back there. So, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure what the comment was, but oh, I think he's referring to this one. Have you had any bloopers while scrapping stuff flying out of the truck? Yeah. So, I think let's be honest. We're all human. We all make mistakes, and things happen, right? Even when I try really hard to make sure that I'm not doing something stupid, life just gets in the way, and stupid things happen. But I don't post those, especially if, they just because they just sort of happen. It's not like I've got a camera out there ready to record everything to see if it happens, right? So that's one issue is just they happen. And it's like well, that would have looked funny if I had a camera going, but they may not. And then if sometimes you'll see them in my videos that there are sometimes when something has happened while I was recording, and yeah, it's there because it's there, right? And it's a good learning opportunity. But yeah, it's not like I would do a complete blooper roll or something like that. It's it's just not something that I would necessarily do. I also worry because I take, and I don't mean for this to sound the wrong way, but to me, I worry a lot about people, following what they see on YouTube and getting hurt. And so I always try the best I can to demonstrate a safe practice and good habits, and not recommend people do things that are risky. That could get them hurt, or is just dangerous to do. So the result is I wouldn't be putting up those kind of videos just because I'd be afraid that somebody that didn't know any better might do something and get hurt, and I would feel really bad about that. So Bush Dog says his dad had an accident with a grinder, went through his glove and deep into his middle finger. I tell you, even when you've got all the right, even when you're doing the best you can to protect yourself, this equipment is dangerous. I'm afraid that sometimes we get a little bit careless and with it. We get used to using it all the time, and we forget how dangerous some of this equipment can be. And even when you're using all the right safety stuff, this stuff can hurt you. So the advantage of wearing proper safety equipment is it reduces the risk, but you can never eliminate the risk associated with using power tools, sharp objects, things of that nature. All right, so Truck Fan says they've had a lot of bloopers, like dropping screwdrivers, spilling parts. Oh yeah, those kind of things. Oh my God, yeah, that kind of stuff can happen all the time, right? You've a can of screws and small bits and nuts and bolts, and you hit it with your elbow, and it's all over the deck, and now you're picking it all back up again. Oh yeah, those kind of things happens all the time. Happens all the time. That's just reality, right? And Roger, you're absolutely right. Complacency is dangerous. It's one of the reasons why when I was in the U.S. Navy, we had such an active safety program, reiterating the same things, doing safety stand downs. It was the realization that complacency is what leads us to get injured more times than not. And there are little tricks that you can do too to help prevent, to help yourself. So for instance, in my workshop, my grinder, my Sawzall are right next to my visor. So if I'm going to use the grinder or the Sawzall, I have to walk to that place where they are sitting, and right there is the visor. So it's just that little trick that I've had to stop what I'm doing, walk over to where I have the grinder, and there's my safety visor right there. So it's little tricks like that you can do to yourself to try to break that complacency whenever possible. Truck fan says, you'd be surprised how big a mess things full of RAM or SSDs can make. Yeah, no, I'm probably. I've seen some of the mess that people have made processing some of that stuff. So yeah, I know what you mean. Yep, yeah, I know what you mean. And Roger's saying that he spilled half of a 5-gallon bucket of MOSFETs. Oh man, that would suck. I bet you cussed, Roger. I bet you said a dirty word. Oh man. All right, so we did our safety discussion for the day. Let's get on over and talk about our industrial metal for today. And today's industrial metal is none other than our favorite, copper. Let's see, what is Kitco? Now remember, this is the Kitco website that I'm using. Kitco and AppMex, they're websites that sites that I've used to buy and sell my physical gold and silver in the past, but I am not sponsored by either one of them. But I always get a kick out of the advertising that they put on. We've got a bunch of knives up here, so I don't know if this is I don't know who is this? Ad choices. All right, so it's not Temu anyway. And here's a morning chair workout advertisement. So let's get rid of those Google ads, and let's get in and talk about copper. You may recall that a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about copper being stuck in between what are referred to as two different super cycles. So if you missed that discussion, let me go into it real quick here. Copper was being driven by what was referred to as the China super cycle. So as China was growing and building housing and increasing their production, they were using more and more copper amongst other materials. And so copper was being driven by the ups and downs of the China market, referred to as the China super cycle. There's a new super cycle that is starting, and that is the electrification of our world. So electric vehicles, electric infrastructure, which is going to use more copper. Right now, the price and consumption of copper is kind of being tugged in both directions between both the China super cycle and the EV. And so China, as most of you know, the Chinese economy is faltering, it's going down. They have overbuilt their housing, their manufacturing is having some real problems. There are many nations that are starting to call China uninvestable. So businesses are pulling out of China. And so with the Chinese economy falling down like that, there's a negative pressure on copper prices because they're not using copper the way they used to. But the good news is that as electrification picks up, copper should slowly start to be, copper prices should slowly become more driven by the consumption as a result of electrification. So we are kind of in that period in between where it hasn't quite caught up yet. So that's why we see copper prices kind of not making a lot of sense. We would think that we would be seeing copper prices going up more, but they're not going up as much as we would like them to. So if we look right over here, we see here's 24-hour spot price on copper. And if you connect these, if you look at these low ends, they're going up. And if you look at the top of the curves, they're going up. So at least for the last 24 hours, we saw some copper increase. But 24-hour cycles they don't really do a lot for us. They don't move the needle as far as pricing for us at the scrapyards and stuff. Unfortunately, when we look at the 30-day, well, we see a definite downward trend going on here in the 30-day copper spot price. And what is going to be interesting is when we look at the inventory, we're going to really scratch our heads here. So we look at the 60-day, and again, we see very clear downward signal in the 60-day copper spot price. I will bet you, and please go ahead and drop some comments here, that your yards have actually been lowering their copper prices. I've been pretty fortunate because the yard that I go to, they try very hard to keep their prices very, very stable. But even there, I've seen a couple of small decreases in copper, in the insulated copper wire world. So, but drop some comments. What are you seeing in the last few weeks with your yards for copper prices? Here we are with the 6-month copper spot price. And I tell you, this is actually not as bad as you might think, right? 6 months ago, we have this drop, and then it recovers and then drops again. But we see this sine wave pattern going on here of ups and downs and ups and downs. Well, if you kind of go across the, kind of like that, maybe like this, you kind of see that it's averaging out, in this 380-ish kind of world. So long haul, that's not bad for us. Let's see, JR Cat said Rockaway just dropped by 10 cents. Oh, yeah, okay. And the 1 year, here we saw, the copper prices were climbing and we were all very happy, and then they've dropped and we're all upset. And here's where we're at and we're talking about. So here's our 5-year. Now the good news is if you look at these lows here, they're still well above back here, right? So 5 years ago, copper prices were well below where we're at right now. And there's every reason for the long haul, anticipate continued rise in copper. But here's what I want to draw some attention to. We look at the 30-day. Let's go to London Metal Exchange. Here we are. 30-day London Metal Exchange warehouse stock levels. So you see the stock levels going up. So stock levels going up. You would expect prices to go down, and if we go back up to the 30-day spot price, 30-day spot price, prices were going down. Oops, wrong button. So not as smoothly as we saw with the metal exchange stockyard or stocking, but it makes sense that. And if we look at the 60-day, let's go London, 60-day London Metal Exchange. So we see stocking levels continue to rise. And sure enough, we've just been talking about the prices going down. So what we really would like to see is the inventory of copper start to drop off, because that's going to be a good sign for us. And this one, here's our 6 month, and this is a little bit concerning here because if you look 6 months ago, levels went down, then they came up, they dropped again real hard, and now they're up way above where they were 6 months ago. So that means prices are going to continue to go down. And for the 1 year, we see inventory levels again. The inventory levels are above where they were a year ago. So there's nothing to help us with pricing there. The only reasonably good news here is in the long range picture, we see the 5-year London Metal Exchange inventories steadily getting less and less and less. We look at these troughs, and we see these troughs. They keep banging off about 6,000 tons here. So they get down to a certain point and they just start filling them back up again, but they never fill up as much as they were before. So long term, that's a good thing for us, because that says that long term copper is, we don't have the inventory of copper that's necessary for consumption, and that will eventually drive copper prices up. Now, here's some interesting stuff that I've read throughout the week. A lot of the analysts out there are saying that copper could go up by as much as 20% in just a few years. They're looking at prices of 9,800 a ton. And that's like what? That's just under $5 a ton. I mean, $5 a pound. Just doing quick simple math. So we fully anticipate copper values are going to go up long term. Now, here's the question though: is a 20%, and that was one source. All the sources are somewhat in that neighborhood, that there's a good percentage rise, but is it huge? It's not 200, 300%, but it's in the 20 to 40 to 50% rises over the next few years. So the question for all of us then is it worth us hanging on to our copper for that potential 20%-ish kind of rise in prices? I am very curious, as always, about what all of you are doing. So let's go in and see what some of the comments have generated here for copper. E-Waste Mike is saying that his yard has been steady for the last couple months. All right, and he's taking copper and brass in tomorrow. But Mike, we all understand your situation. Well, those of us that have been following you understand your situation. You need the cash flow right now, so that makes perfectly good sense. HH Recycling is saying that he hasn't sold copper in quite a while, and he's hanging on to it for a bit unless he needs to sell it. Yep, nothing wrong with that. That's a good plan. Roger saying that his local yard is actually up. Okay, all right. 315 for number 1, 305 for number 2. All righty, very cool. And Mike is saying that he's at 285 and 290, so a little bit lower. Let's see, HH. He's saying, Roger, that's pretty good. His is about 350 Canadian for number 1 right now. Okay. Now, Roger did comment that it's uncharacteristic for my local yard compared to Bloomington's price. They should be around 260 or 250. So, yeah, you know what, Roger, I bet you are absolutely right. They have a contract to fill. And, this is a very good point here that Roger made. And it's something that a lot of times we forget. Especially if we're just hobbyists and we're just selling to the yard and we're not in the business that the big scrap yards are in. And I have come close to this on a couple of things. They negotiate a order, right? So they'll have a contract with somebody that says they're going to supply X amount. And in return for committing to supplying X amount of a material, in this case we're talking copper, the buyer says, all right, well, I'm going to pay you X amount. Now there's a penalty associated with not filling the order. because now that buyer is left without the copper that they need, and they can have some problems. So sometimes the yards will have to offer better prices than other local yards, because they need to draw in more of that material in order to fulfill a contract, because it's still better for them to offer us, the small scrappers and the hobby scrappers, a little bit more money rather than pay the penalty for the contract, for being a default in their contract. So, Roger, this is a really good point. It's something that most of us don't have to deal with. I have kind of well, not kind of, but I've negotiated some e-waste agreements with some folks. But because I'm such a small player and the people that I'm dealing with have all the leverage, I've always been very, very careful about those negotiations with them. So it's a dicey place when you're making that, when you're working in that world of, you've got contracts that you have to fill, and how you gotta, sometimes you gotta bite the bullet and then pay more money to get the material that you need to satisfy the contract. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's why sometimes we're scratching our heads going, well, wait a minute, I don't understand. You look at these bigger prices like the London Metal Exchange or the world spot prices, and you say, yeah, but my yard, the price went up, so what's going on? That's probably what's going on. JTC has got 369 for copper where he's at. And then Daniel's saying, could the larger companies be hoarding copper, hedging bets on rebuilding? So, Daniel, I suppose it's very possible that some larger yards are holding on to some materials, what I call strategic reserve. I'm holding on to some materials, right? It makes a lot of sense if you have the capability to do it and you don't need to be selling the material for cash flow or other financial obligations. Now, interestingly enough, and we're going to talk about this here in a little bit when we talk about the United Auto Workers strike, there are some materials where the prices are going down. So rebuilding, is an interesting issue, whether it's Ukraine or any number of places. Let's see. Earl is hanging on to all of his copper. Yep. And I buy I'm only buying stocks for myself as a person. My company is not at a place where it's buying stocks yet. So the stocks that I buy are my personal investments. That's right, recycling. Welcome. Great to have you here. Okay, let's see. Any other comments going on about copper here? Yes, number 2 was 405 in Calgary. Okay. All right. Very cool. All right. Well, look. Hey, that was a great discussion on copper. We're going to be talking about copper a lot as time goes on here, because it's one of those metals that we all love, and it is we're living in a time where, and this is what's so, to me, so cool about this, is we're living in a time where we have to decide. We're using our noggins and we're looking at what's going on out there, and we're saying, I think copper is going to go up. I mean, this is me personally. I'm saying to myself, copper is going to go up. It's going to go up enough that it's worth me stockpiling some of my better grade copper for the future. Now, if I'm completely wrong, then I've stockpiled a bunch of copper for nothing. But it's a really interesting place to be in this time. Very exciting, and these kind of discussions are always a lot of fun to have. So, okay, I was thinking about selling some of the company's copper and investing it, but I don't know how you go about it. Well, you know, HH, essentially a business is a legal entity. Now, the one thing that you need to check with, you would need to look into is, and because I've never crossed this bridge, so, you know, I don't know the legalities of how you set it up so that a stock is purchased in the name of the company, and, you know, and how the company invests in that. But if you talk to your accountant, your CPA, they can probably help you with that to figure that one out, because there's different ways that that'll be treated between a business and a person and the type of business entity that you've set up. Let's see. Yeah, Roger's making the same comment here. Check with your accountant to see if there are financial drawbacks with the company owning it rather than you personally. Yeah, you know, very, very important. You know, for that kind of issue, make sure you check with your accountant, understand the ups and the downs. You know, there's always risks associated with any of these kind of decisions that we make. So it's definitely worth checking with your accountant, and also make sure that the legal entity that you've established can legally buy and sell stocks, and you know, and how that impacts you. And JR Cat is coming right in with the this is like, remember earlier he said hold, now he's saying stack. So yeah, JR Cat's just building up his reserves, man. He is stacking it up. And you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that approach. That's your plan, and that actually brings us to our hey, Street Copper, great to have you here, man. So that actually brings us to our business note for today. And our business note for today is planning. I'm sure that everybody out there has heard that old phrase, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I get so tired of hearing these buzzwords sometimes. I mean, it just kills me. Anyway, but there's a lot of truth in that, because whether you're doing, it's especially important if you're doing this as a business. If you're doing it as a side hobby, or you're doing it because you want to eventually become a business, it's really, really important that you understand where you're going and what your plan is. I like to think about plans the way we did when I was in the Navy, and I learned how to do planning, strategic planning, operational planning, tactical planning. Strategic planning is your long-term horizon. That's your 5 to 10 year. What am I doing? Where do I want this business to go? That sets up decisions that you'll make in the midterm. What in the military was kind of called operational planning, but for us in business, we think of it more along the lines of our midterm kind of stuff, which then affects the decisions we make in the short term, or the tactical. In the military, we would call them tactical decisions. So here's a perfect example of the question of planning when we talk about, are we going to stockpile materials, right? Are we going to stockpile copper? Well, if you, either as a hobbyist or as a business, you know you're going to be doing this for another 5 to 10 plus years, and you make the decision, my strategic plan says to stockpile some percentage, 10% of my copper. Then what that says is, all right, I'm going to need a place to store this. I need something to put it in. I need a way to plan it so that I am, in fact, putting aside 10%. And 10% of what, right? So that's when you say, all right, my strategic plan is to stockpile 10% and wait for the price to go up 30% before I sell it. Every week, you pick a period. Every week, every month, you say, I've got X amount of copper that I could sell. I'm going to take 10% of that. Now, this is your midterm, your operational to tactical decision. So you say, all right, I'm going to take 10% of that, I'm going to put it aside and store it up. And then routinely you measure it to see how much value you have stocked up in there. So that's how your long-term plan drives your decisions all the way down to, what am I taking to the scrapyard today? Another one of the decisions that you have to make is, and this was, from my life, and you all have seen this transpire on my life, my videos about my company and the way I'm doing this. I want to become a larger player, a real scrapyard, specializing in e-waste. Well, I'm not going to do that by lifting everything up by myself, right? I mean, let's face it, I'm not a spring chicken here, okay? And some of this stuff is really heavy. So I knew I needed mechanical assistance. I had been on the lookout for something to help me lift and move heavy things around the shark cage. So when I had the opportunity to purchase a Genie lift at a relatively good price, I jumped on it because it fits great into the shark cage right now. It's maneuvers really easy. It turns inside of its own space, right? And yes, I have to push it by hand. And yes, it can only lift 350 pounds. But you know what? I lift a lot of stuff that is 80 to a couple hundred pounds. And the Genie lift makes that a lot easier for me. So that was a strategic decision that I'm going to grow this company and I need the equipment to let me do that. That led me to always be on the lookout for a piece of equipment. And when it became available, I was able to, without any hesitation at all, say, yes, I'm going to buy that. So it's very important that you understand from the long term where you want to go with what you are doing, so that when these decisions come up throughout the week and the day, you can make a decision. This is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, because it follows this plan that I have. This can come down to other decisions that we make, right? So, for instance, whether or not you're going to buy a building or a piece of land versus continuing to lease that building or that space. There are trade-offs associated with that. So you knowing what your plan is, you can make those decisions with a little bit more information. Now, when I was in the military, I learned from Colin Powell that the best plans only survive first contact with the enemy. In business, that kind of, it's not really the enemy, but you have your plan. And then when you start executing your plan, you have to be open to understand when you have to make adjustments and changes to your plan. But if you don't have a plan, then you have no idea what you're doing. And when you make those changes, you have no idea where it's going to take you. At least by having a plan, when those changes are forced on you or the opportunities are there to make adjustments, you have some idea of where the plan is going to take you. And you're not going to get it right all the time. 100% guaranteed you're not going to get it right all the time. But at least by having that plan, you know from what point you are diverging and what the potential implications are. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Here's another perfect example. I have known from day one that YouTube and sharing all of this with you was going to be a major part of what I do in Shark Scrapper. So I make the long-term commitments to be better at recording things, whether it's better equipment, better understanding of how to use the editing software that I have, better things about lighting and discussions and storytellings and things of that nature, trying to make my videos something that are informative and entertaining at the same time, because that's a strategic part of what I want to do with Shark Scrapper. Now, for some of you, it's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm just, turning the camera on and we're just talking about what goes on, and that's perfectly fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. But by knowing that I want YouTube to be a major part of Shark Scrapper, I'm also willing to make investments in things like going to Vid Summit in 2 weeks. And because I know I'm going to Vid Summit in 2 weeks, because I have that in my plan, I know that I need to be recording extra stuff over the course of the week so that I can have videos uploaded and ready to go for the week that I'm in VidSummit and won't be able to put up any videos. All right, so long story about planning. Bottom line is, even if you're just doing this as a hobby, have some idea what your plan is and what you want to do with that plan so that you can execute on that plan. All right, so enough about planning. Excuse me, a little coffee here. Another example of planning. I know when I talk a lot, my voice gets a little bit growly and my throat gets a little bit sore, and so I always have some warm coffee to sort of soothe that out a little bit. And look at that, it just happens to be in this wonderful Shark Scrapper mug. Product placement. Okay, so we're not going to talk stocks today. I did want to talk a little bit more about the UAW strike because Irish is not going to have his live stream today because he's out goofing off. We'll go a little bit over time here. Last week we talked a little bit about the UAW strike, what the potential implications are. I'm not going to regurgitate the news, and we're not here to debate the pros and cons of the strike. But we're here to talk about what the implications are for us in the recycling world. And here's what we saw during the course of the week. We've seen the price for hot rolled coil, which is one of those bellwether prices for steel, go down. And we've also seen prices for shred steel, recycled shred steel, start to go down. So we are starting to see the impact of the UAW strike on the recycling industry. Now, of course, it makes a lot of sense, right? If they're not making cars, they don't need all the parts. If they don't need all the parts, they're not going to be buying steel and aluminum and copper to make all the parts, right? So as the strike progresses, it would be logical to expect, especially shred steel prices, to start to go down. A little bit of pressure on steel prices. So I would not at all be surprised to see shred overall go down, across the scrap yards. Roger's saying that his yard is predicting a drop in shred. Yeah, so now again, it all depends on who your yard is selling to as to what's going to drive their prices. We have a yard here that is associated with a plant that makes rebar. And so chances are their shred prices aren't going to be overly affected because the housing industry is still cooking along. They're still building like crazy down here. Plus, we've got, we're putting in roads and sidewalks and all that kind of stuff. So rebar is still moving, and we probably shouldn't see a whole lot of impact from that yard. Now, I don't know who else they sell to, so there might be some more drops, but bottom line is we're probably going to see shred steel prices keep going down here. Mike says that if shred drops any lower, we'll have to pay the yard to take it. All right, so here's a question. What is the lowest you have ever seen shred steel in the time that you have been scrapping? This would be really interesting because, I got to admit, there were some times where I was saying to myself, why am I doing this? This is stupid. So go ahead, drop in the comments the lowest price that you have ever been paid for shred. Yeah, JR Cat says 3 cents a pound. That's right, is saying 20 a ton. Yeah, that's right about where I was. 5 a ton? Oh, back in the 90s. Let's see, what would that, we'd have to do the math to see what that would equate to today. Electronic scrapper saying 3 cents a pound, yeah, okay. Street copper saying right now at 5 cents a pound, okay. You got a ways to go. You haven't seen pain yet, street copper. Come on, man. I'm telling you. Like a couple of folks here, I actually was at one point got paid 2 cents a pound for shred, and that's when I was scratching my head, going, "Yeah, okay, this isn't going to happen. This has got to change, or I'm done with this." HH says I never even took shred in until I had to start reporting. Oh, okay, all right. Daniel says some yards here wouldn't take shred at one point. Hard to beat 0. Well, and that's Copper Buck is saying 6. It's an interesting point, right? Because you take a yard. I mean, there's some yards here that steel is like a major thing that moves through that yard, and if the shred prices are so low that they can't economically move the shred, what do? I mean, they've got some issues too. Then that's right. Recycling says 2 was the lowest price, and 16 was the highest that he's ever seen. So yeah. It's that's a, I think we could still see some more pain here, right? So, let's see, Mike, got to go finish loading the van for tomorrow's scrap run. So far, he's around 780, not counting a crap load of breakage. Later on, Mike, have fun. We will catch you later on, bud. I think the bottom line is that as the strike continues, we are going to continue to see shred prices go lower. So don't be surprised if the shred prices go lower. It could potentially have an impact on aluminum as well, because as we all know, there's a lot of aluminum that is now being used in vehicles to reduce the weight of the vehicles. Some vehicles, they're aluminum body parts, aluminum frames. So we might start to see the impact on aluminum as well. Maybe next week next week we can talk about aluminum again and see if we see anything there. So we definitely have there is going to be some impact for us from the auto workers strike. Now, of course, it's kind of rolling around different yards. The union is, being strategic about where they are having people go on strike, and they're also doing. It's interesting because they've made progress with Ford, so they're striking at less Ford places than they are the other two. So it's like I think the union is playing a very interesting game of how they're working the strike to keep the negotiations moving forward, and we'll see how it plays out. But again, for us, hang on, because it could have a negative. It is already having and could continue to have a negative impact on our shred. So just hang in there and for that. And shred is one of those things that's not the kind of thing that you can really stockpile, right? Because it tends to take up a lot of space. If you've got some heavy HMS, heavy melt steel, that doesn't take up as much space for the weight, depending upon what it is. But still, that stuff's bulky. It's not like stockpiling your copper. So, we got some interesting times coming up ahead there. So, so let's see, what do we got here? Copper buck recycling. I've noticed that when it drops way down, there's less competition of scrappers on the street. So there's more for him to pick up. Yeah, absolutely, because that really weeds out the fly-by-nights, I'm going to make a killing going out and collecting stuff. The folks that are new to it, that don't understand what it's like when the prices are really bad. So yeah, it actually leads to more scrap being available for those of us that do it regularly. Absolutely. Grass Cutter Palmer. Hey Tim, how you doing, man? I'm doing great. How are things on your side of the pond? We won't be going over to see Irish later on today, Tim, because he's actually over in the UK attending some game of some sort. Some big deal that they're all excited about over there. So, Daniel brings up an interesting point here. He says this year gas prices haven't followed scrap prices. Low metal prices used to mean cheap gas. I've always heard it put the other way around. That cheap gas meant low steel prices. It's funny how people like to try to tie things together that really aren't directly related. And so there's, a lot of people will say that the shred prices will follow the gas prices. Then when they disconnect, people scratch their heads and they go, what happened? Well, the reality is that the two of them were not directly linked anyway. Gas prices have nothing to do with steel prices, but they tended to follow the larger macroeconomic influences of, when things are going really good and economies are strong, you need more gas and you need more steel, and so they go up and up and up. And then when there's trouble in the economy and you're not building as much and you don't need the fuel, they go down, down, down. And so they looked for a long time like they were linked, but they're not really linked. And so we're seeing that now as they separate, where you've got gas prices going up because of Russia's war in Ukraine and decisions by the Saudis. And it has nothing to do with what's going on with steel prices that we're seeing here in the U.S. So it's just a really interesting twist going on there. Let's see. Bush Dog is saying, I can't wait for the day we get to scrap the EV vehicles, except for the batteries. Yeah, EV batteries are going to be an issue. But the good news is that there are some efforts, at least here in the United States, there are some efforts where the government is working with industry to try to understand the challenge and get ahead of the curve on how they're going to handle the batteries, store the batteries, recycle the batteries. So they're trying to get ahead of that whole battery challenge for EVs. But yeah, there should be some good aluminum. Of course, it's going to be a bunch of plastic too. But there should be some good aluminum that comes out of that, plus copper, right? It'll be interesting to see. And then Bush Dog says, however, I see people selling lithium batteries on eBay to refiners. Yeah, and it's weird. It's like I can sell some types of lithium batteries, but not others. And then there are places that'll take the lithium batteries, but they won't pay for them. Yeah, we're in this weird place with lithium batteries in the recycling industry. Just not sure. It's got to do some working through some things. So, HH, okay, have a great chat, Shark Scrapper. He's out of here. HH, take care, man. Have a good week. Be safe. That's right, recycling. There's a new company that recycles EV batteries now. Yeah, there's some companies out there that are doing that. They're trying to figure it out. I've seen a couple of even some YouTube videos on it. And I'm a member of ISRI, the Institute for Scrap Recyclers, and there's some interesting information that I get pushed to me from ISRI about what's going on in that world as well. So yeah, the recycling industry is definitely taking a look at that and trying to get ready for what to do with lithium. You got to be careful with lithium because it can catch fire. It can be dangerous, but if you handle it properly, it's like anything else, and there's some good potential to reuse it. I'm glad you're doing good, Tim. Great to hear that, man. So let's see. Yeah, I see refined lithium at $40 US a gram. Yeah, okay, cool. And Roger says, I still have an e-waste buyer that buys his lithium batteries at 20 cents a pound. He's not sure how long, though, with the insurance companies cracking down on storing them. A lot of it is going to depend on how you safely store the batteries. Absolutely, absolutely. When I was working in the underwater robotics world, I talked to one of the major lithium battery manufacturers, and the guy there that I was talking with, he said, yeah, when you make lithium batteries, it's not if you'll have a fire, it's just a question of when and how many you'll have. Yeah, so, and then with one of the contractors I worked at, we had a lithium fire, and I mean, it was nasty, just nasty. Bush Dog says he keeps his lithium batteries in a steel pail and he tries to take them into recycling places. Yeah, that's one of the best things you can do, right? Try to keep them in a container that is not itself flammable, although lithium batteries can get, when they start burning, they can generate a lot of heat. But a steel container is better than nothing. It's also good if you can keep them outside of your building so that if they do catch fire, they're not going to take down the whole building or, that kind of thing. And keep them separated from a lot of the other material, and then just don't let it accumulate a whole lot, right? Because it's like anything, if there's a lot of fuel for the fire, you're going to have a much worse fire. So if you can limit the amount of fuel that is available for the fire, then you're good to go there. Street Copper, I hosted the poker night last night, so I got a bunch of aluminum and I didn't even have to. Oh man, that's hilarious. Oh man, I'm so bad at poker that I just walk. When I was in the Navy, if any of my buddies ever invited me to a poker game, I would come in, I would just hand somebody my money, and then I'd go drink because, I suck at poker. Oh man, I watched an EV car burn down the highway. Oh man, I've seen that too, and it was an unbelievable fire, just unbelievable. And I would really hope that people got out of that vehicle because, yeah, that was just a rough fire. Yeah, the charging grid issue is going to be a big one, Buck, and they're working on that too. That takes time to put in place. None of us were around when the internal combustion engine vehicles started in this world, and there were, you see, the comments that people would make back then. It's like, well, how are you going to find gasoline for all these cars? Eventually, gas stations got established to the point where we have gas stations sometimes on every frickin' corner of an intersection, right? So the infrastructure will come into place. And it's that balance of demand that will cause the supply to come in, but you need to have a certain amount of supply for there to be the demand. So yes, absolutely. And unlike internal combustion cars, the gasoline engine, where people had to go someplace to get gasoline because you weren't, necessarily storing hundreds of gallons of gasoline or diesel at your house, although some people do. With EVs, you're going to charge your car at your house. So you've also got the infrastructure of a charging station built into your house. And now we have this, I don't know about where you all live, but where I live, we've started to see where there's this friction. Once again, I'm going to get on my HOA bandsaw. I wish it was a bandsaw. Where some HOAs are pushing back on people having chargers built into their house. It's just freaking insane, right? but the infrastructure for electric vehicles is a huge part of what is going to drive the consumption of copper and aluminum that we want to sell. So I think it's a good thing. Let's see. Clover Recycling in Warren, Ohio will take those lithium batteries for free. Okay. All right. Well. Let's see what other comments we got going here. Bush Dog, the Copper Buck, is talking to Copper Buck Recycling, same here in Canada. I know the Edmonton, Alberta, they have been shutting down a lot of charging stations. Yeah, so that's comment related to what's going on with the infrastructure necessary for EVs. Let's see. Roger, use a steel container. Please be sure to tape off the contact points or exposed wires so they don't short out. Yep, absolutely. That's back with the lithium batteries. Always put tape over the contacts to help reduce the possibility of a short, and that short is what can lead to the fire. Interestingly enough, when I was doing this for the underwater robotics and working with the Navy on testing lithium batteries, there's an inherent production problem that leads to micro shorts in the batteries when they are manufactured. What happens over time is the micro shorts that are in the actual chemistry of the battery can grow to the point where the battery itself can generate enough heat to self-combust. So I have to believe the manufacturing processes have gotten better over time. This was 8, 9, almost 10 years ago when we were studying that. So I have to believe that the processes for making lithium batteries have improved and reduced the amount of those micro shorts, but it's an inherent manufacturing challenge with lithium chemistry batteries that those micro shorts exist, and if they grow big enough, they can cause a fire. So that's it's another one that you got to watch out for. I don't think he was necessarily talking about soda cans. Oh, Daniel, take care, man. Great to have you here. Have a great week. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, Street Copper. I got you. All right. Oh, man. And Bush Dog says that, yeah, the people got out of that fire, but they had the highway closed for hours. Yep. That's good. I'm glad the folks got out okay. All right, so let's see, and that's right, recycling is out of here. So you know what, folks, we've been at this for almost an hour and a half now, and I know that normally we would have been up having a lot of fun with Scrapping Irish, so we will, we're going to go ahead and call it a wrap here. It's been awesome chatting with you all. I look forward to everything that goes on during the course of the next week and what it leads us to in our discussion for next week's live stream. I am planning right now on going live next week. So, but I'll put up the notice on Sunday morning to let everybody know for sure. And next week we should have Scrapping Irish back, and it'll be fun to see how his travels went as well. So. Have an awesome week, everybody. And, wait a minute. I just saw a very important announcement here from Roger. The Midwest shark feeding frenzy has begun. Oh, sweet. By the way, I think I have that fossil that you sent me over here. Yes. So for those of you that aren't aware of what Roger's talking about, he sent me this fossilized tooth from the Midwest shark. And apparently the feeding frenzy, well, it's not a fossilized tooth because it hasn't been around that long, but apparently the feeding frenzy has begun. So we'll see if Roger finds any more teeth from the feeding frenzy. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Stay safe. We'll see you all later on.